Hey everybody, it's Top 5 Wednesday time. Top 5 Wednesday is a group created by Ginger Reed Slaney and is now currently hosted by Sam from Thoughts on Tomes. It is where you have a subject where you pick 5 things. It's a book, and of course it's book related, that reference that particular topic. And this week's topic is the top 5 books from kids' books or books from your child that you would like to read again as an adult, something like that. I will post the link to the Goodreads group so that you know exactly what it is, and also if you are interested in doing any of these topics. So I just realized that I don't have the ones that I originally said. I don't have all the books that I mentioned. And one of them is not actually a children's book, but it kind of references its original inspiration came from children's stories. It's just made for, older, like middle grade and young adults. Which is kind of so weird because you're not officially an adult until you're 18, in the US anyway. So I just find it so weird that they call, books about teenagers, young adults, and books, and you're not officially an adult until you turn 18, which 18, 19, you're still technically a teenager, but you're not like 16 or like 14 or anything like that. But anyway, this first one I said here, and these are in no particular order, is The School for Good and Evil, which is about these 2 girls, Agatha and Sophie. Sophie is pretty, she's always so charitable and always trying to help because she believes in the legend in their village that 2 people from their village will get taken to this school known as the School for Good and Evil, which is 2 schools in one, and one of the children ends up in the good school, the school for princesses, princes, knights, good wizards, magical sidekicks, all the good guys into fairy tales and stuff. And then you have the School for Good, the School for Evil, which is all the evil, the witches and the ogres and the demons. Well, I don't know if they would actually have demons, and the bad wizards and like trolls and all the monsters of fairy tales. So Sophie thinks she's destined to go to the good school and is constantly always doing all these things that she believes will help send her to the good school. So she's always very charitable, always nice to everybody. And she even befriends Agatha, who is kind of considered an outcast by the town. She has these huge little big eyes. She's very socially inept, very awkward. She doesn't like talking to people, and she spends most of her time with her mother and Sophie. And everybody says that if she gets chosen, she'll end up in the bad school because she's a witch and everything. But what ends up happening is the people, those that come collect the two kids come, and they end up collecting Sophie and Agatha. And Agatha, of course, does not believe in this. She doesn't want to go. She doesn't like the idea of going to the school and getting separated from Sophie and everything. But what ends up happening is that it's reversed. Sophie ends up in the evil school, and Agatha ends up in the good school. And Agatha just wants to go home, and she keeps telling everybody that she doesn't belong here, and she just wants to go home and be with her friend Sophie. And Sophie, she also says she doesn't belong, and she says that she should be in the good school. And whenever the two schools meet, she tries to find ways to get Agatha to switch with her, but Agatha only wants to work with her so that she can get her and Sophie out of there. And meanwhile, there is the subplot of this boy, Tenrus, who is the son of King Arthur, and he thinks he is meant to be with Sophie because she's the most beautiful girl there. But he keeps being drawn to Agatha for some reason, and Agatha does not like him. She can't stand him. She thinks he's like everybody else in the good school, like snobby and arrogant and egotistical and all that kind of stuff. So it's 3 books. So it's basically about them dealing with this, and there's so much more to the story than that. But I'm not, if you want to read them, well, either if you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about, and if you haven't read the book, then I would recommend it. But like I said, this is not actually a children's book, so it's kind of cheating. But I feel like it is inspired by fairy tales, which originally were for children, or to teach children lessons, not to take stuff from strangers, not to go in the woods alone, all that kind of stuff. And like not to be vain and selfish, and So that's why I put it on this list. I feel like when kids are old enough to understand and comprehend, I think you can read the story to them. And they would still, because it's all about fairy tales and all the cliches and tropes of fairy tales and how the shallow ways we define what is good and what is evil. Because Agatha is considered the ugly one. She's not as pretty, and they automatically think she's meant to be in the evil school, so that she's a witch. While Sophie is pretty and she seems all nice and sweet and charitable, really she takes her friend for granted, and she's such a selfish little girl. I mean, I think she does grow as a character, obviously, but she's just and she just does some vain, selfish things that, if you dig a little deeper, it makes sense that she's in the evil school. But she doesn't believe it, and everyone else thinks that she's meant to be in the good school because she's the pretty one, she's the social one. Okay, so the next book that I have here is one I actually have a copy of it, and that is the Wizard of Oz series by Frank L. Baum. Frank Baum didn't just write the Wizard of Oz, but that is the most famous one, about the little girl Dorothy who gets trapped in a cyclone and lands in the magical land of Oz. And she meets the Munchkins and the Good Witch of the North, who, they tell her that all you have that like the only way you'll be able to get home is you go talk to the wizard because he's the most powerful being of Oz. But unfortunately, of course, she becomes a target of the Wicked Witch of the West, because Dorothy's house accidentally landed during the cyclone. Her house accidentally landed on the Wicked Witch of the East, the Wicked Witch of the West's sister. And she has the Witch of the East's shoes, silver slippers, not red, not ruby red. If you've seen the movie, they're actually ruby red. But in the original book, they are silver. The slippers are actually silver in the original book. So she is told by the Munchkins and the Good Witch of the North that she must go see the wizard and follow the Yellow Brick Road. Well, along the way, she meets the Scarecrow, who is desperate for brains. He goes with her, and then she meets the Tin Man, who wants a heart. He's a man made out of tin, and he wants a heart. And then she meets the Cowardly Lion, who cannot, is afraid of every little thing, and he wants courage. So they all go to the wizard. They run into talking trees, the flying monkeys, the poppy flowers, all the stuff that tries to stop them from going to the wizard. And that's the only one I know, and everybody else knows. But there's also, the second one is The Marvelous Land of Oz, which is about a boy named Pip, who he's escaped his witch mistress Maud, or Mombi, and he is trying to escape from. Goes on this journey. He makes a man called Jack Pumpkinhead, who is a man that has a head made that's a pumpkin, and then he makes this horse, or he finds. I don't know if he makes the horse or he finds the horse. And that's really all I got. I haven't got very far in this one. I need to get back to it. But yeah, I feel like this is another classic story, and it's about, appreciating what you have, appreciating your home, and not ever taking it for granted. And just because you don't always like being at home because school's going wrong, or you're getting in trouble with your parents, or there's just drama at home and you want to escape, you're gonna one day get that chance, and you're gonna regret it. You're gonna miss home, and you're gonna wish you're gonna get lost and wish you were home. Because, and I believe it's true, there's no place like home, because your family will always love you no matter what. Now, your family doesn't necessarily have to be your blood, but the people that love you most are your family. And that's what The Wizard of Oz is about. And like I said, I imagine all the other stories teach great lessons too, and are magical and whimsical. And just this story has always been part of my life. You know, I've seen the movie. I had a copy of the movie, a VHS copy. I don't have the DVD copy though, which is surprising. But and they did this at our community theater when my dad was cast as the title character, the wizard. And but as I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering, because in the movie, the wizard is the actor who plays the wizard, and in the show they did at our theater company, he's like always the same person. I mean, the wizard and Professor Marvel, which that would make sense, but he's also the doorman and the guy who drives the carriage with the horse of many colors. So I'm always wondering if either it was because it was in Dorothy's mind, so someone that she met plays all these small characters that she meets when she goes to see the wizard, or maybe the wizard is his way of watching over the people of Oz. He disguises in the Emerald City, like he disguises himself as all these other characters, like the doorman, the driver of the carriage. Maybe it's his way of watching everybody, because they of course don't know who the wizard is, and they play that out. And there's a movie that they recently made called The Wizard, The Great and Oz, the Great and Powerful, which is about how the wizard arrived in Oz and everything, which I think is a great movie personally. But this is just a classic, and I think you should read this as an adult, even if the writing is not, even if the writing is childish, I definitely still think you should read this, and I would definitely, it's one of my favorites. Okay, so next, let's see. And then next I have The Velveteen Rabbit. Now this edition is by Marjorie Williams. Now I don't know if that's the original author, or maybe she just translated it, like just took the words and reprinted the book. And the illustrations by Donna Green, who I just realized, this is not the original artist who created the artwork for this book, but she's the one who created the artwork for this particular edition. So this is a story about, this is one of my favorite childhood classics. It's not technically a classic. One of my favorite childhood books growing up. It is about this Velveteen Rabbit who was given to this little boy. And of course, at first the boy, he has so many toys, he doesn't care about the Velveteen Rabbit. And the rabbit starts having these conversations with this ancient rocking horse, who tells him that if you want to be real, you have to be loved by someone so much, then that's how you become real. So one day the little boy gets sick, and his nanny, while he's looking for another toy, his nanny decides, just take this rabbit. So she gives him the Velveteen Rabbit. And he gets really attached to the rabbit, and he takes the rabbit everywhere he goes. And this rabbit becomes his favorite toy. He can't live without this rabbit. So I'm sure you can figure out what's going to happen next. So, one day, the boy has gotten a little bit better, so enough to go outside and play and stuff. So he has a picnic outside, and he accidentally leaves the rabbit in there outside in the garden, and the boy cannot, of course he's heartbroken and everything, and the nanny and his parents don't want to go out there and waste their time looking for what they think is a silly little toy. But the boy never gets the rabbit back. And eventually, the rabbit, while he's he's sitting there being left behind and stuff, this magical fairy comes and he's like, because you were loved so much by this little boy, I'm going to grant you your wish, and you get to become real. So it's kind of a Pinocchio type story in a way. This is such a beautiful story, and I love the artwork that Donna Green created in this particular edition. Now I don't know about. I want to look it up, but I actually have a book by the original author and artist, and I think the artist was actually the daughter of the author who originally wrote the story. But she gave me. Okay, no, so Marjorie Williams is the author, but she's not the artist. But look at these. It's so pretty. I love this artwork, but it's not the original artwork. So, and I actually have The Velveteen Daughter, which is a book about the author, about Marjorie Williams, I guess, and her daughter, who was the original artist for the book, who was the original illustrator. I should look up her work. I mean, I don't know if it's actually, maybe after I read that book, I'll look it up. But I just love this artwork, and this is actually a story I'm thinking about reading. I might read now, coming up, but I love this book, and I feel like it's all about friendship and being loved, and I feel like it's a metaphorical concept, but I feel like it's also, I mean, like it's a literal concept in this story, the idea of being loved so much you become real. But I also feel like, metaphorically speaking, you could argue, like, it's also about the idea of loving so much that they become real, that they become so real and so beautiful to you. And they mean more to you as you. You know, and it's just such a beautiful story. It's one of my favorites. Okay, so next, I guess, the next one I want to talk about is Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. This is one of my favorites. Now, I remember the movie better than I remember the book. I'm talking about the animated movie, which I did see the live action one starring Dakota Fanning, which that was great too. But I'm talking about the animated one. Because I feel bad when I don't remember the movies better than books. But it's basically about this little girl, Fern, who raises this runt pig, Wilbur. But eventually, as Wilbur gets bigger, she has to give up Wilbur and send him to her uncle's farm, where he meets this little spider named Charlotte and a rat named Templeton. And to protect Wilbur from being turned into bacon by I can't remember the uncle's name. Fern's uncle, they come up with the help of the spider, they find ways to make Wilbur seem extraordinary, seem special. Charlotte designs special words in her web because she's a great writer, and to show that how special Wilbur really is. And it gets to the point where he becomes so famous with all these words being said and anything, and he does all these little tricks and flips and all that stuff. And he becomes so famous that Fern's uncle ends up being able to take Wilbur to the county fair, where he is awarded, I think he receives a special ribbon by the mayor and all that kind of stuff. And it's such a beautiful story about love and friendship and learning how to, the hardest thing for a person who loves someone, which is to say goodbye to someone. And it really deals with grief and death and friendship and love and all those beautiful lessons. And it's a very bittersweet story. It's funny and, cute and everything, but it's also very sad at the same time. And actually, I didn't cry during the part that everybody usually cries in, that you would think I would cry. I cried when Fern had to give up Wilbur and send him to her uncle. That is what broke my heart. That is what made me cry. I feel guilty because I'm like, I don't cry during that one scene that everybody cries in, but I cry when Fern has to give up Wilbur. But it did make me feel better to know when my sister said that I also cried during that scene too. I mean, yes, that other scene that everybody gets sad about is sad. We both agree with that. But that other one is, I think, I don't know, it's a little more sad. I feel like the one where Ferd has to give up Wilbur. Okay, so the last one that I want to mention, the fifth one I want to talk about. Well, it's actually 2 books, but by the same author. I couldn't decide which one, and that is The Witches and the BFG by Ronald Dahl. The Witches is about this little boy, after his parents have died, and he is living with his grandmother, and his grandmother tells him about witches. He tells him all these stories about these witches, like how they don't have any toes, they have square feet, they have purple eyes, and long fingernails and all that kind of stuff. Then one weekend, he and his grandmother go to this hotel by the sea to stay for a little while, and the little boy discovers that there are witches in the hotel, and including the famous Grand High Witch himself, herself, not himself. And the boy gets caught, while he's exploring the hotel, he gets stuck in the conference room where the witches are meeting. And they have revealed themselves, taken off their wigs and all that stuff. The makeup is amazing for the witches. I mean, the Jim Henson production. And he overhears their plan. The Grand High Witch has created this potion that will turn kids into mice. So this other boy is brought in as a test subject, and this is a boy that our main boy knows, and he gets turned into a mouse. Unfortunately, before the protagonist boy escapes, he is heard by the witches, and they are able to capture him, and they make him swallow the poison. It's in pill form, I believe, if I remember correctly, and he gets turned into a mouse too. And it's all about the 2 of the boys exploring, trying to escape and running through the tunnel, trying to get to their parents to tell them what's going on, like to warn them. But of course they're mice, so it's kind of hard. This movie's freaked out, but it's still it's so fun, and it probably is a lot easier to watch as an adult than it is as a kid. But the one part when the boys turn into mice freaks me out. The way they do it is so freaky. I mean, first they look, they start looking like they're gonna puke, and they're all green and all that stuff, and then they start jiggling, and their whole bodies start jiggling, and then their ears get really big, so they have mouse ears, and they get the mouse nose, and at first it looks like a Jim Henson creature, which it's a Jim Henson provides for that part. And it's so freaky, and just that transformation scene I have nightmares about that scene. But it's such a good story. It's so whimsical, and it reminds me of a fairy tale. And so does the other one that I want to talk about, and that is the BFG. I don't remember that one that well. I mean, I know there's a movie, but I haven't watched the movie yet. But I remember reading the book years ago. It was probably like around 5th grade when I read it, or when my teacher read it to us. It's, from what I remember, it's about this little girl who befriends the big friendly giant who he's kind of an outcast in the world because giants are evil and they like to kill and eat humans. But he likes humans. He wants to be friends with them, not eat them. And it's about them, the little girl and the big friendly giant, going on all these great adventures and trying to hide from the other giants because technically they shouldn't be friends in the first place because they're supposed to eat humans. It's just a really cute, funny little story. And the ones that I'm saying here are kind of, some of them don't even have a lot of lessons. They're just really cute, funny, entertaining stories that I would love to read again. And I know, there are some Ronald Dahl books at the library, but I've neglected, because when I go to my library, I have 2 weeks to check out a book. And yes, I could recheck out the book technically, but I just want to try, I'm trying to get the book done so I won't have to keep rechecking it out. And some of those books are a lot longer and it takes more than 2 weeks. And the problem is I end up neglecting my own personal collection. I have so many books that I haven't read, even though like I love reading, I've come to realize that there's a lot of books here that I have not read that I have. I figured that out because not just from looking at the shelf, but actually I will make a list of the books in my library and write them down, and then I will check off the ones that I have read. And let's face it, I have more books that aren't checked off than books that are checked off. So I'm trying to narrow, before I start going to the library again, I want to try to go through my collection of books and read my own personal collection. So anyway, I wanted to show a bonus one, and that is my collections of Grimm's fairy tales. I love fairy tales, I think it's good to read them as an adult. Even though they're written for kids, they teach such great lessons, not to trust strangers, not to take candy from, not to steal, not to be vain, or selfish, or cruel. And they're also, actually, originally, they were kind of written for adults. And they're a lot more creepier. Snow White, the girl was like 12 when she got rescued by the prince, and he barely knew her. He just saw her and she's like, "You're so pretty. I like you." But actually, she doesn't even, it's not a kiss that resurrects her. It's actually because when the evil queen disguised as the peddler woman gives her the poison apple, it gets lodged in her throat. So the prince, I can't remember how he does it, but somehow the prince is able to pop out the piece of apple that was lodged in her throat. Somehow he's able to do that. Like, he picks her up and takes her out of the coffin or something. And he is able to, and because the piece of the apple comes out of her throat, that's how she wakes up. And then in the original Snow White, the Sleeping Beauty story, the prince sees the Sleeping Beauty kiss and has sex with her while she's unconscious, and she gets pregnant with twins. So it's the fairy tales. And then in Cinderella, the stepsisters, one of them cuts off her heel so she can fit in the slipper, but the blood is dripping from her shoe. So the prince is like, he's all disgusted and doesn't want her. And then the other stepsister, she cuts off her toes, and that's how she fits her foot in the slipper. But again, he sees the blood dripping. And then I can't remember, because I just watched one of my favorite booktubers, I want to say like Jen Campbell, I think. She talked about Sleeping Cinderella. She does like a series of videos where she talks about fairy tales. And Cinderella, she said that the stepsisters, I can't remember how he realized it was Cinderella, how he recognized her, but the stepsister, after he recognizes, the stepsisters get their eyes pecked out by birds. So it's a very disturbing little story. The fairy tales are really disturbing, but I feel like it's fun to revisit them as adults and to look back. And they're also quick, easy reads. And so for readers, a read that's quick is really appealing, I feel like. So those are my top 5 books, well 6 now, including that collection of fairy tales, of books that I think to read as an adult. So what are your books, your children's books, that you feel like you would love to read again as an adult, that you have read as an adult? If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, and please click subscribe if you haven't already. Bye!